Good morning, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world at the moment. Guys, this is another Neurodiversity Stories that we put out every single Friday live for you guys to help tell your stories, but ultimately spread more awareness around neurodiversity. So guys, we have an amazing guest today. We have Richard Semmens, who is a specialist, and he's going to be sharing some amazing stories, but also be discussing with us all around neurodiversity, but also around workplace, around, I will let him introduce himself in any second now. But guys, who am I and why are we putting these neurodiversity stories on? Well, my name's Darren Clark. I'm a global neurodiversity consultant, and I found out that I was dyslexic at the age of 36. So very, very kind of late on. So diagnosed with dyslexia and ADHD at the age of 36, 44 now. So what I've been doing now is sharing, creating a global message really to spread more awareness around neurodiversity, but also get people kind of connected across the globe, not just in the UK, but on a global scale. So guys, I'm going to bring in my next guest. This is our second guest. So we ran this last week when we had Catherine, who did an amazing job helping to share her story and spread more awareness. And I'm going to bring on Richard now. Richard, good morning. How are you? Let me just there we go. We'll start again. Good morning, Richard. How are you?
Oh, the dreaded mute button. I'm fine, thank you, Darren.
So thank you so much for being our second guest on our Neurodiversity Stories. So Richard, it'd be great if you just introduce yourself and tell our listeners who you are and what you do.
Who I am? Well, I'm autistic and ADHD. Sorry, that's more what I am. I was diagnosed even later than Darren, in my early 50s, having had a sort of career of a lot of short-term jobs, doing lots of different things, sort of going off on tangents, never quite settling into jobs, leaving jobs because I was getting frustrated or because of depression or the rest of it. I went through sort of corporate life, marketing, web, IT, went into teaching as a secondary teacher, and then a suggestion from my older sister, who is also a teacher, and she that question that I remember it now. One Christmas, she said, "Have you ever thought that you might be autistic?" Okay. And all of a sudden, it just clicked, because I'd actually worked in a school that had an autism unit, and so they had a lot of very specialist support for the neurodiverse children there, and it was very weird to have that sort of turn the other way around. And so I've gone through the diagnostic route, got my autism diagnosis, which explained bits. What
age was it you had your diagnosis?
Oh, I was about 50 when I got the autism diagnosis. But other bits of it didn't quite fit. And they also said that my diagnosis, there were certain bits of it, I'm always wanting to do new things and investigating things, like being on here, talking to people about it, finding out new stuff, never sort of settling on one thing at a time. And as a result of what I got involved with and setting up my own social enterprise, I met a broader cross-section of neurodiverse people, and the whole ADHD thing sort of came into the equation, and I had that stereotypical view of the hyperactivity side of it, and to get a long story short, I ended up getting an ADHD diagnosis a couple of months ago. But I'm very much on the ADD, the attention deficit side, difficulty focusing on things, getting things started, getting things finished. So yeah, I think that's probably enough diagnoses for me for now. Anyway, I can't think of anything else I qualify.
No, that's fine. And on a day-to-day basis, what do you do as a day job?
This is following my autism diagnosis. I sort of got involved with the autism sort of community as a whole, and found lots of sort of local, really strong support groups run by families for their own children. And one of them was very much based around the children's interest in trains. So you can imagine it's an organisation called Engine Shed, and they basically had a room in a community centre, trains, Brio train tracks and all things all over the floor. 10 local children having a whale of a time, and with their permission, I borrowed the idea, scaled it up, took it on the road, nice. And All Aboard Club came out of that. and we've been running inclusive play sessions for 2-3 years now. And then out of that, and out of the necessity to diversify, thanks to COVID, that has broadened out into us developing sort of activity packs for children at home, and most recently doing much more sort of one-to-one support, one-to-one mentoring, not necessarily for the children of whatever age, not necessarily as a tutor, not helping them with their educational attainment or their grades, but very much sort of focusing on what is it that makes learning difficult for you. And I'm now getting inquiries about this and working with people up to university age and beyond. It's one thing I'm realizing, and it's sort of and it'd be interesting to hear for the people listening into this, is that I've struggled to accept that I'm an expert in this area. I'm an expert because of what I am, not by what jobs I've done, what qualifications I've got. So I can't really put it on a CV very well, but I am now, people are coming to me and saying, please recommend so-and-so, or can you talk to my child about this, or can you tell us about how best to, and I'm going, oh, okay. So it's very interesting to go from a feeling challenged about everything and everything being difficult with what I was doing and not knowing what I wanted to do, and now all of a sudden becoming an expert that people are coming to me for. It's very odd.
I think that element, I've always said, in the past, talk about neurodiversity, and I think to myself, am I neurodiverse enough? And I guess that's, I mean, it's just, I guess, we're always kind of seeking putting ourselves in groups and how that works. But yeah, I've asked that question before, and a lot of my experience is, kind of lived experience, I guess, as opposed to that as well. So, Richard, this is Neurodiversity Stories, and I'd love to hear some stories around, from yourself. So, please feel free to share any stories that you have or any experiences that you have, and I'd love to listen.
It's been interesting. I was chatting. I've been very fortunate in finding an ADHD coach, work coach, which I managed to get partly funded by Access to Work, which is a story in itself. But that it's great to be able to sort of reflect with them about it. And I was actually realizing that my job has been sort of partly my therapy, so to speak, in that it's allowed me to realize sort of what I can do and almost accidentally with things. And it's very odd looking back. It seems like an eternity, even putting COVID aside. But it seems like an eternity, sort of 2-3 years ago, opening the doors in the local youth centre with 2-3 people who I knew from other groups, other autism groups. And I know there's a couple listening in. Thank you, TJ. And literally just opening the door with a room with a load of train tracks all over the floor and going, what am I doing here? What actually is this? And then finding 20 kids arriving with their families in the first 10 minutes, and it's very scary to run your own business, and it's very strange to even. It's more interesting for me to then be able to have the chance to go, okay, which bits of these are scary or difficult because of my neurodiversity, and which are just scary anyway, because the fact I'm trying to do everything at once. So yes, it's. What has come through as a result of me, I got onto a couple of sort of small startup business sort of development training courses, and it was interesting with conversations with people how there is a high proportion of neurodiverse people who actually start their own business. Okay. Which is, I mean, particularly, dare I say, our generation, in that there was so little diagnosis and so little understanding, and people went through school. I was fortunate. I found school relatively easy. And I say your comment before about whether I'm neurodiverse enough, I know that I'm not. My challenges are there, but there are people with, much more significant challenges. I'm able to, have a chat on a webcam. I'm able to stand up in front of people. I can train people. I can do, which is unusual, I suppose. Yes. But a lot of neurodiverse people have ended up in a job or something which a traditional job, which then perhaps hasn't worked at all well, and then have by whatever means have then moved into doing something themselves, and then suddenly find that that sort of takes away some of those challenges of working with other people, the corporate life, the politics, and all the rest of it. So they're in a sort of safe zone, but then they develop their business and they start acquiring volunteers, staff. They have to, they have the financial things to think about. They have this, where we're going to go when COVID comes along. So it's intriguing to see. I've sort of now met an awful lot of people who, diagnosed or not, sort of suspect that they are neurodiverse in some way, and had a similar experience of just sort of struggling at school, not because they couldn't do it, but they simply couldn't access it.
Yes. So how did you have a love of that element, or how did you get into that that side of it? Is that always been a passion that you've always wanted to help on that side of it, or is that?
I think that's a bit of my neurodiversity, which is not unusual, is this thing of putting other people first, in ahead of yourself. There is a huge neurodiverse people, certainly autistic ADHD, have got the rubbish about them not being empathetic and things is annoying. We are extremely thoughtful about other people, often at our own expense. And again, a lot of the entrepreneurs that come through are more social entrepreneurs rather than business entrepreneurs, in that they are providing a service which is a personal developmental thing. It's training, it's mindfulness, it's personal development. And I think as well, there is a lot of neurodiverse people are very self-aware, only because of what they've had to think about to try and get their heads around why they react in certain situations, or why this job is difficult, or why they struggled at school. So they're very thoughtful, and I think that comes out of it as well. So I've ended up, I do, and a lot of the things we do are there not just for the sake of doing them or for the sake of generating a salary for me, hopefully, but also as an end result, and trying to find ways of helping somebody in the longer term.
So what? So you said that you had your diagnosis in kind of, what was it, when you was 50? Is that correct? So what? So did you know? Did you? They say, because I found out when I was 36. So it's very late in stages of understanding that neurodiversity. But I always kind of knew that there was something there, whether it was a blockage, whether it was a way of seeing things differently, dealing with things. What made you get the diagnosis, and was there kind of telltale signs beforehand?
I think it was I was slightly running out of options, in that I tried many different careers. I tried different things, and none of them had apparently worked. And yet, my school results suggested that I should be able to do this. Yeah. But it was very much, looking back on it, it was very much going into traditional type of job and things. I was also able to pick things up really quickly. I could analyze something, work out how better to do something. So I could do lots of things. But then I hit this sort of blockage. And within 3-6 months, gone from the novelty of, this is a new job, new people to work with, new things to all of a sudden, this isn't going anywhere. I can't persuade anybody to, take on my ideas. And so I then regress and get annoyed, and they then start getting annoyed with me. And it was one of those things of thinking there was something. It wasn't just me, so to speak. It wasn't just the way I was doing things. And the weirdly, as I say, I'd worked as a trainee teacher in a school with a secondary school with an autism unit, and never seen it the other way around. And it's one of those things that somebody chucks that little light bulb in, and you're suddenly go, oh yeah, hang on, let's look at this the other way around. And then fitting it, working out where I fitted in on the autism spectrum was interesting to me, and then a lot of sort of comparison with others as well. And a lot of sort of networking via Facebook groups and things. There isn't as much with adults. There are some sort of networking groups out there, but it's it was sort of finding my own place, I suppose, and then the ADHD on top of that, which then clarified more things. And now I allow myself almost to be more neurodiverse. I've been masking like heck through that. I was even doing it in my autism assessment. No, I don't do that. No, fine. I just go on we just go off on weekends and do things. And do we? Heck, I plan it through like mad beforehand. I know everything that we might do. It's all there in my head.
It's amazing when you say about the planning side of it, because I know, and a couple of minutes before we went on and to do this live, if you don't mind me sharing, you sent a big message through saying, well, actually, can we change it? Can we can we change the topic of this and have a conversation around that? And I completely get it. I completely understand on that element. And do you find yourself doing that a lot in everyday things then?
Yeah, that was a classic. I laugh at myself when I do it, and I did that as I said to you before we came on air. It was that thing of, this is coming to my head. It's not just coming to my head. My autism has been chewing over this for 2 days since I wrote the first message to you about what we could talk about, and then it's that thing of, I've only just now put it into words. That's my ADHD leaving it to the last minute again, because of the fact we're going on air in 30 minutes time. Now I've got this thing of, I could just blurt it out, but hang on, is this a good time? Having been in your position, Darren, and being the compere, so to speak, I know what it's like having people throwing things at you at the last minute. And then I just thought, well, if I don't, it's just gonna screw my brain up, because I'm going to be talking about one thing and want to talk about something else. So yeah, it's quite odd in a way. I have to sort of go with the flow, and sometimes I go, no, that I want to do this because, even though it is a last minute change of plan, or equally, I'm going to stop doing this now. The activity packs we developed just didn't take off for whatever reason. There's a number of reasons why. They were great during one of the lockdowns. They weren't going to be, the business case didn't quite work with them. And we really, unfortunately, had to pull the plug on it after 3 months, which was really hard.
Yeah, but, because of the amount of work that you've put in to facilitate that.
And that's then hard. It's this thing of helping other people. You're then sort of not being able to help other people in the way you would like to, and you have to sort of come up with another way of doing it. So yes, I kick myself often in terms of how I leave things to the last minute. And if I haven't got anything like I'm appearing on air at 11 o'clock, then things just drift, and my autism brain analyzes things to death. And it's not necessarily helpful. But then things come out of it. It needs a little sort of trigger, a little sort of something to spark my brain off into other directions, and think, okay, there's room here to at least investigate things.
So, Richard, when you found out so what made you get the diagnosis?
I suppose it was a thing of trying to make sense of things. I looked at everything else I'd been through, to my GP. I'd been through mental health services, and it had all been a bit, sort of smoothing over the cracks a bit. And then another situation came up, another job situation, whatever it might be, and here we go again. So it was that sort of trying to find an explanation, I suppose, but also the wait time wasn't too bad. Adult services, at least then, were relatively quiet. They got busy since then. And it was, I started doing a lot of research myself and going, that's autism. Okay, but that isn't autism. Okay, fine. And then the actual diagnosis was something of a, I wasn't surprised by what they were going to talk about. And I could also have found, examples to illustrate things. The ADHD one was even more straightforward. It was a case of I just know. And now I know what ADD is all about without the hyperactivity. It answers all these questions. So yes, it was almost a case of, there you go, there's your evidence. And the guy goes, yeah. And yet I don't appear, the dreaded phrase, I don't appear autistic. I don't appear to have ADHD.
I mean, that phrase, that terminology, they don't look dyslexic, or they don't look neurodiverse.
It's strange.
What does that, what does that terminology even mean? What is it, what are you meant to look like, So how did it make, sorry, Richard, when you had the diagnosis and it was kind of, that was done, did it change anything? Did it within you? Did it make you then think, well, actually, add those kind of aha moments in the sense of, almost forgiving? When I got diagnosed, I was kind of, I always look back on some of the promotions I didn't get, or some of the assessments that were set for me, and we know with the brain, it kind of, we don't know whether it's real or it's not. It's brain's a fascinating thing. But I can look back now on some of those and think, well, actually, I can forgive myself, I guess, for some of the things. Was that similar with you?
Yes, I mean, it's very odd to look at it at the time, and I'm on lots of forums where there are parents or adults who have just been diagnosed, or parents of children that have recently been diagnosed, and you see them going through it as well. I mean, there's been I often see a comparison with the stages of grief. If you know a loved one dies, and what emotions you go through, and there is a similarity following a diagnosis, and there is a thing of if only. And then there's a blaming yourself of being, and then there's that thing of, and it does with time come round to a thing of going, okay, this is me. And you then, I went through a sort of negative thing of saying, oh, well, looking at all the limitations on it and thinking, well, what job could I do out of all this? But that was very much looking in the traditional sort of job world. I'd almost I couldn't do that. And teaching, I couldn't get, and this didn't work, and I couldn't be mountain, and I couldn't be this, and I haven't got the sort of sales skills to be a sort of consultant type, corporate, running my own business type person. What does that leave me with? And it's then a sort of, it's one of those odd things that sort of creeps up with you, that you end up realizing that it's not. I'm always cautious about people that talk about neurodiversity being a superpower and things that can sometimes be a little bit masking the challenges, so to speak, and trying to find a super positive out of it. You've got to be realistic about it. Yes. And you go, okay. And I had a conversation with somebody on a board who was really struggling. They wanted to get into psychological help, counselling or whatever it was, but they honestly didn't think that they'd be able to do it. And I just off the top of my head, I said, well, how about being a specialist counsellor for neurodiverse people, because you'll talk their language? And she hadn't thought that, because, and it's one of these funny things where we don't want to end up isolated in our own community, but we are experts in how we tick. So
Richard, you hit the nail on the head on that sense, and I think it comes back to when we mentioned, am I neurodiverse enough, or am I dyslexic enough, or ADHD? It is that element, and I guess I have so much credit and for people who specialize in this, and they've got the qualifications, but they've also done the years of learning and everything else, and I admire that so much, and wish in some aspects I could kind of be academically, I guess, in that circle. And I guess it takes both elements, doesn't it? You have the lived experience, and then you have the educational science profession, the educational side of it as well. So I guess it, like you said, it is an amalgamation of all these different qualities that can help and support an individual. No one, when I know that I'm my dyslexia is when I'm stressed or tired, words start moving around. I know that. I mean, I physically live that. So when, but I could read an article about it and then explain it to someone. And equally, they're both as powerful, because they're given the information. But I guess what I'm trying to say is that we forget how much knowledge we actually have by living with it.
Yeah, and yes, and also when I've worked with, I've been a customer of organisations where their neurodiversity awareness isn't quite what it should be, to put it politely, and I've ended up getting on my high horse about it, and realizing that with the best of intentions and the best attempts, they are approaching it from a very neurotypical world. They're not necessarily doing a box ticking exercise because somebody said that we now need a neurodiversity champion. But when it comes down to it, they're still looking at it from either a neurotypical viewpoint, if that's the person they chose, or just from somebody who has got or that neurotypical person, if they have family who are neurodiverse, they're only getting a particular flavor of it.
Yes.
So, and that's one thing I find is every time I run an event, I'm doing mentoring with children, whatever it might be, and different children come along, different families come along, different adults I'm working with, and I look at them and go, yeah, you're part of the family as well, but grief, how you've now muddied the water even more in terms of trying to find a word that sums everybody up. But it's the variety, the diversity is such that it's very difficult to explain it. And you have to be very, I think, open about it. I joke in conversations when I go off on tangents and go, oh, there's my ADHD brain again. And I can I then react depending on how they react to that, as to whether it means anything to them. But you have to accommodate, and you can't have a one size fits all, which I think goes back to your earlier comment. What does autism look like? What does ADHD? What does it say? People have a textbook or definition of it from a training course or from one or two people that they've met along the way, and they don't realize just how the variety of it. And if you don't tick that box and you appear successful and you don't have learning difficulties and you can present in front of 300 people, how can you be autistic? How can you be dyslexic? There's so many things which are very easy in some respects to explain better, without getting too defensive about it.
So, Richard, I'm gonna because there's a whole stream, because we're streaming this on a couple of different platforms and stuff. You probably can't see all the different questions, but for me, so there's lots of different people. How about when you've so we've got a gentleman on here called Simon Pipe, who I've recently connected with on LinkedIn, and he's asking us to expand on other people taking notice of your ideas. Massive theme for me as a journalist and then educator within ADHD. Now, do you find that when you bring ideas, I mean, I guess in the sense of, for me, I guess when I'm trying to bring ideas into the corporate sector, I guess, and I'm trying to raise more awareness around neurodiversity, and I hope this kind of covers what Simon's asking. I think it could, when you mentioned around, you don't make it like a tick box exercise. You really want to make an impact, and you really want to help. And I guess I've spoken to some companies in America, huge, large corporate companies, but it seems to get passed from one department to another department to another department to another department because no one really knows how to deal with it.
No.
Have you found that within yours? I mean, when you've got an idea, how do you progress to push it in the right direction? And get people on board.
Interesting. Looking back to my corporate world, that was where I had real problems. One thing which I know it comes to my mind, which is the sort of autism side of things, is that I quickly, because the fact the way I've thought through something, I've come up with something, I've come up with the idea of a presentation, a workshop, whatever. I've been thinking of that for 3 weeks. I've now got this thing. And whilst I think with my sort of marketing hat on, I can come back a couple of stages in to introduce it to somebody, I know full well that I am way past their level of understanding.
Yes.
And I find it really difficult to wind back and actually ask people the basic questions to find out where they're at, in order to then I'll sort of go, and I've got this way, and it's going to be 3 sessions, and it's all very factual and matter, and this is what we're going to do, rather than this is what we're trying to achieve by it.
Yeah.
So I'm a great informer. I'm not the greatest persuader.
I think you're absolutely right on that aspect, and I guess it's like anything, isn't it? You take someone, take for instance when you're growing a business and you've done all the research and you've done this, and then you go out and then you speak to the client, and you've probably been working on this for 6-7 months, behind the scenes, probably for years within your passion of doing it. And then when you speak to someone, you're almost like, like trying to kind of get out everything that you're trying to say to get someone to, to buy into it. And I guess what, the businesses that I've run in the past, I think it's always, finding a problem and then a solution, and how best to be able to solve that, equally together. I guess I've worked towards that, and that's helped. But I think it's, it is, I guess we do have a certain way of working, like you said, whether it's the education system, whether it's the corporate sector, and it's very hard to chip away at that.
Yeah, I think from these many hats when you're running your own business, is that I've had rushes of inquiries from people about certain things which were great, but then, and some of them are people who get what I'm doing and go, yep, fine, almost sort of, when can we start? I struggle with those who are in two minds, or clearly have got, I've got to think about it in terms of whether they can afford it or whatever else, or whether they can do that. And having those people, I know there are 8-10 different sort of people who I'm sort of in the process, and my ADHD worry is that, and I know I've forgotten them. They might pop into my head again and say, oh yeah, so and so, I haven't heard from so and so about that. What do I chase them up? So I think that pushes me to desperately want to, any initial conversation with somebody, I'm wanting to sort of know exactly whether it's a yes or a no in that, or at least in the follow-up email, which of course is completely impractical.
But for us,
and if they say no, do you take, how personally do I take that? You know, and where's my next customer coming from? I'm not managing a large corporate thing with X thousand customers and the numbers are going up and down. You know, when I'm doing one-to-one mentoring of people, there is only room in my week for 15, 20 of them. Yes. So one, those slots have got to be filled, and when somebody turns around and goes, actually no, we found somebody else, or we don't, yeah, heck, that's big, and it's my salary as well. So yeah, it's a tricky one. The one thing I am finding, which I really find hard, is the whole sort of delegation thing. I've been looking back on my corporate world, I was very much the one-man specialist within a smallish organization. I had a sort of fluff, dotted line team around people, lots of people I would work with, but I was still the person. I'm now in a situation where I'm finding out how to do everything, including the finance and my tax return and all of that stuff. And not having a clue, not having needed those services in the past, and actually just going, I just need someone to do this. This is outside, it is just taking up so much of my brain space, my decision making, my energy, even trying to get myself to do it.
So Richard, was it that when you say the delegation side of it, because we know within any shape or form, for me, sometimes is it the actual delegation, or is it the losing the control of something? Is it?
Because interesting, the C word comes up a lot with autism, and it's an interesting one. It is, I don't know about the loss of control. It's that thing of,
or the perfectionist, in the sense of that you want to make it right.
I think it's that black and white, all or nothing thing. In my autistic brain, my ADHD brain, I will launch into something. And even if it's something I dislike doing, when I got around to doing my accounts before I finally thought, I just got to get an accountant to do this, I spent best part of a day making a very complicated spreadsheet with all sorts of interesting equations, formulae which I never used before, and made it look really nice. But actually, I then looked at it and went, this is just completely unusable on a day-to-day basis. It's a snapshot, and then I went, God, no, I just need somebody just sort of take my money. And luckily, through one of the entrepreneur groups, found somebody, a recommendation, and he's absolutely brilliant. I don't know how he makes a living, but he's and it was one of those things about, I wanted to do it. I was pushing myself to do it, so I was having a go at myself about not getting it started. I had a thought that I could do it myself. It would be interesting to do. It was something new. Oh, ADHD, shiny things, squirrels. It's all there, and then it just sort of isn't, because it's actually it's going to be really boring. So then everything else piles in instead of it. So you just have to sort of draw a line on it and go, no, I'm just crap at this, and I actually just need. Can I find a way of doing this? Even if it means a sort of favor of somebody from at home, or just to say, can somebody check over this or whatever. And it's very odd to broaden out. And I see the comment on LinkedIn of the people I'm working with, and I forget that what I'm doing in terms of being the sort of, I suppose, the ideas person, the person pushing it along. I don't need to be absolutely everything. And there's a heck of a lot in it for everybody else. I'm not asking favors of these people. They're getting a huge amount out of it as well.
So thank you for sharing that, Richard. So Richard, when you think about all the people that you've worked with, maybe the lives that you've changed, is there a kind of like a grand scale? Are you looking for a world, to kind of cover the world with this? Is there something, I guess what I definitely struggle with is that element of, stopping and taking stock, I guess, and realizing, and I guess it's in our nature and it's ingrained in us, that giving nature, and wanted to change things and wanted to, do things for other people continuously. But is there a point with yours? Is it just going to be a continuation of the work that you're doing, and is there a scale of how many people you want to help?
We apply for, we applied for various grants successfully and unsuccessfully, and of course they all ask the same thing, and we show your business plan and your forecast for the next 12 months and where you're going to go and how many people. I'm going, I have no flipping clue. I mean, it literally started in the youth club around the corner from me once a month, and I suppose looking back on it without realizing I was trying something out, and it was fun to do. It was very much, it was supplementary to what I did. Then of course it made the big step to, no, this is what I'm going to do. Then all of a sudden it needs to be of a size to, generate income, to pay your bills, which puts a slightly different spin on it and needs it to go up speed. Then it hit the sort of the buffer stops in terms of how big, there's only so much time at weekends and holidays that the families are free. Okay, so what else do we do? What do we find to do during the week? So there's been a mixture, I suppose, of things that have been developed out of, because they had to. Yeah. Versus the things that were a more sort of organic thing. So we went from 1 location to 4 locations. Well, then we started getting invitations. So we got invited. We went to the Science Museum and ran a play session at one of their big events. We ran an autism day down at the Bluebell Railway, and so they've expanded out. But there was still a need to make it viable from my point of view, which is why we've sort of broadened out sideways. But it's still got the same. Although we're doing different things, it's still the same aim. It took me a long time to work out what our sort of aim was, and I still change it on a day-by-day basis.
I'm really pleased you said that, Richard. Really pleased you said that, in that sense of it changes. I guess I work for large corporates in the sense, and I guess they have their the way the structure works, and then it just seems not monotonous in a way, but it just, it's a great structure. And I get it, because that's why they're a big company, and that's why they're very successful. But I guess it doesn't tend to work in the way that we work in that aspect. And then things do change. We do evolve and move that way and bring this in and change that. And I love that kind of life. And I feel very blessed that I can work for myself, because I feel if I need to go back into work in corporate, that's fine. But I just feel I would struggle more now than ever because of that continuous changing of the way that I like that variety of creating something and then moving in that direction. And it sounds very similar. To
I think if I did do anything that was sort of corporate training, which I do, is avenues I'm looking at, and I've got thoughts, I've got ideas as to how to, and I would my idea of training, which is now something of a maverick in terms of how I present it. I'm a qualified teacher trainer, but in many ways I've experienced that traditional training, which tends to be done to a pattern, to a theme, to a style, it's just like education in school, because it's the same thing. You're trying to tell people about things and then get them to remember it, then get them to apply it. And unfortunately, it doesn't work for everybody. And I've been on courses which have been very difficult for me, not from what they were telling me, but because it is the way they delivered it. And when I then said, actually, it doesn't work for me, I'm happy to explain why. Maybe you could just use a different way of doing it, but do the same thing. And they then start getting awkward, because this is the same way. We've been doing it this 20 years. We've had really good feedback. I don't care. So I tell by my tone, I get to the point of going, okay, I'm not going to gently introduce this. I'm going to be quite sort of blunt about it. And so I think I've moved away from being corporate, and I'm increasing. I suppose it's a personal confidence thing, I think, as well, which is sort of nice to do these things in order to just for me to sort of externalize my views and go, actually, I'm doing the equivalent of putting this out on paper. I'm saying my views on things, and realizing I actually do. I do believe in them.
Absolutely, Richard. Absolutely. The other thing I want to bring up is in the sense of, because we have, I'm continuously putting content out around dyslexia, neurodiversity. But some people say, would you just get off my LinkedIn feed? In a nice way. But purely because well, anyway, the ones that spoken to me they do it in a jokey way. But I just feel, I'm continuously, that creative mind and thinking, well, actually, I just want to put the message out and find different ways of doing this. You do similar in the sense that you put a lot of content out. And I guess, it's very, when you get a platform like, LinkedIn, I guess, which is incredibly powerful and stuff. how do you control your content in the sense of sharing your message? I guess would be really interesting.
That's interesting, because until about 2 months ago, I'd hardly use LinkedIn for anything. I'd previously used it like people do for finding your next job. Then it just sat there and didn't do anything. And I literally I cleared out everybody from my previous working in online learning and marketing and web stuff, because they weren't really my network anymore. And I started building it, and then I literally looked at it on posting things about just occasion, and I suddenly found I had 500 plus connections, and that made me think, hang on, there are people interested in what I'm doing. And I suppose now I'm still working on it. And LinkedIn is a different beast to Twitter for me, for what we do. Facebook is very much the families. Twitter is some of the families, some professionals, a slightly more cozy area. LinkedIn is, I've got people all over from all walks of life, and I honestly don't know how, from my business's point of view, how to best use it. Any suggestions welcome. And so to me, that's more the sort of strategic, this is the way things might go. So I sort of throw ideas up to try and get some sort of feedback from it, rather than it being a PR route.
Absolutely, and I guess it's one of the questions I get asked a lot in that sense of I'm continuously, like I said, continuously putting content out and creating ideas, and I think it's just a case of if more people were able to share their stories, hence why we put the neurodiversity stories together. I think experiences and that kind of the stories, the experiences, the real life, the kind of the behind the scenes person of the business, I found is people warm to that massively. And I guess I think it's it also comes down to how much you're willing to share. And I've always said that whenever I've looked at any kind of marketing and stuff, I've looked at a level and I've said, I'm happy to share all this, but this I'm not. And I think if you have that element of it, I think it can really help, really get more awareness around you as a person and what you can offer.
I think I think there's two things, and I noticed actually on your feed, Darren, that you're sort of developing resources for things as well. I think there is a degree of sort of, I'm use the wrong word for the phrase for the sake of emphasis, sort of shouting from the rooftops. There's a lot of shouting from the rooftops. The world should be better for dyslexic people, autistic people, whatever. We should do this. The government are rubbish, whatever it might be. It's all very well saying that, but then sort of the so what question. My autistic brain cuts in and goes, but what are you going to do about it? So then is that thing of either not just saying about it, but demonstrating it. So these sort of sessions, so people can actually see what neurodiverse people look like, and they don't have 3 legs and they can actually speak. And then there's the further thing, which is the more time-consuming, resource heavy, which is when you're actually doing things, which is very much, I think, my thing. I'm going back to the question about the business plan for all the board club. I always want to be hands-on. I want to see the end results. I don't want to be in my CEO's shiny office on the 23rd floor thinking of my empire. I'm out there, playing trains with the kids. I am the mentor of the organization at the moment. I'm doing the one-to-one things with them. That is what I get out of it personally, which is a big thing. I think for neurodiverse people, we don't necessarily do a job that is for somebody else. It has to be something that we believe in as an end result, what we're doing, but also what we do.
Yes.
And we will get very quickly, very bored, very quickly, very disillusioned very quickly if we're just doing it for the sake of it. So yes, I've gone off on tangents. I've done my ADHD brain's just cut in big time there.
Honestly, I get it.
Take me back, Darren. What was the question?
The question was, hi, Richard, explain who you are. No, I'm really joking.
45 minutes later and you still don't know.
I'm just kidding. Honestly, it's I completely get it, and this is why I love these stories, and I love having conversations, with people, and that variety of element, and of jumping here and jumping there and explaining. So it was just around which you've answered, which was around kind of how you help spread your message, and I think the biggest thing. I remember that.
I remember now.
It's my ADHD. Great ADHD as well. The element, I think connectivity is absolutely key. And thinking, I tend to think on a global level, but I also then think of a small community level as well. And I guess it's just that those building blocks in that sense. Richard, we're coming up. I'm conscious we're coming up to the end of the time. I can talk to you all day, which would be delightful. And I can't thank you enough for spending time on here and sharing with us. Do you have any kind of this? I know I throw this out there now. Is any kind of closing words for anyone that's may think that they have kind of dyslexia or neurodiversity in any way, shape, or form? What would be your kind of advice or helpful support that you would say?
I'm fortunate looking on it that I have been through the diagnosis process and I've had the time to sort of reflect on it afterwards. So it's very easy for me to sort of talk from this side compared to somebody who has thoughts that they may have a particular condition or has recently been diagnosed or whatever it might be. But there are positives coming out of it. It is very hard to get to the point where you not only accept, but you go, yay, I'm ADHD, and it allows me to do X, Y, Z, which other people can't do, which other people they're much happier doing the same job day in, day out. So I'm going around buzzing. It helps. The biggest, it brings in other challenges, especially running a smaller business. You then have to be sort of either organized or get somebody to be your organizer. You have to communicate or get somebody to help you with the communication. And there are people out there. And you have to be if you're doing something slightly in a very specialist area, so to speak, and a new area, you are doing something that's very different.
Yes.
And there isn't a rule book to work to. There isn't a business plan. And so it is very much a case of finding other people who can respond in the way that works for you or the speed that works for you. And dare I say, that tends to be neurodiverse people as well. So if you've got a neurodiverse community that you're part of or on the fringes of, they can actually be great just to bounce ideas off. And just because your brain has got finite space, finite time, finite energy. And I also find actually talking to other people about it is great. It just allows me to sort of process things that have been churning around in my brain for a long time and be able to then either park them and go, yeah, that was the right decision. Yeah. Or actually, yeah, there's some legs in this one, rather than them just churning around and round and round, which they will do given half the chance.
Richard, absolutely wonderful. Thank you so much. Richard, there has been a stream of questions that we've not got to. Would be amazing if you and I could work through these at some point and answer some of these questions, because again, we've run out of time to answer on this. So Richard, thank you so much indeed for being my second guest on Neurodiversity Stories. It's been absolutely amazing to get to know you and understand your story, and I think you're doing incredible, the work you're doing, and you have an amazing following around you that all say exactly the same. So Richard, enjoy the rest of your day. And I will catch you very, very soon.
Thanks, Darren.
Take care. Bye-bye. So, guys, thank you so much indeed for joining us with our Neurodiversity Stories. As you can see, Richard, absolutely incredible individual, doing phenomenal work within his sector. Be amazing if you've not linked up with him. All his details will be connected with this this live that's gone out. Guys, we will be back next Friday at 11 o'clock, streaming through live, so you guys can get involved. If you have a neurodiversity story and you would love to be in the hot seat and have a conversation with me, then please do get in touch. And again, the amazing people that have been in touch before, I will be getting back to you guys and booking you in to do this. So guys, I will leave you. Thank you so much for your time, and I'll see you soon. Take care. Cheers. Bye-bye.